The cowboy was no longer young. His hair, once the color of prairie wheat, had silvered at the temples. Deep lines marked his face like cracks in the dry earth, carved by years of sun, wind, and silence. He lived alone now, on a ranch pressed against the foothills, where the grass grew thin and the coyotes sang to the moon. Most days passed without a voice but his own. He'd speak to the cattle out of habit, small absent-minded mutterings to creatures that never answered. Sometimes, when the coffee pot hissed over the morning fire, he'd find himself wondering how many years a man could live like this before he forgot the sound of his own voice. There had been a time when the world felt wide open before him. 20 years ago, he'd been sharp-eyed, fast in the draw, strong in the saddle, a man others followed without question. But life has a way of cutting even the proudest spirit down to something quiet. It happened during a border skirmish, one of those bloody flashes that flared up between settlers and Apache bands. He hadn't meant to ride into it, just found himself caught in the smoke and thunder. The hills burned that day. Black plumes twisted into the sky and the smell of gunpowder mixed with scorched cedar. He remembered riding through what had once been a village, now just fire and ruin. Men shouted in English and Apache alike. No one knew who was shooting who anymore. And then, through the chaos, he saw movement beneath a broken wagon. A small girl, Apache no more than 6 or 7, curled into herself like a wounded bird. Her dark eyes, wide with terror, caught his. She trembled as he dismounted, reaching out with shaking hands. He didn't think. He just moved. "Come on, little one," he'd said, though she couldn't understand the words. He lifted her into his arms just as bullets cracked overhead. She clung to him, sobbing against his shirt while the world burned around them. He carried her for miles, until the gunfire faded and the smoke thinned. At the edge of her people's land, he left her there, safe, trembling, still crying for her mother. He'd ridden away without looking back. That memory stayed with him like a half-healed scar. Sometimes, when he woke in the night, he could still smell the smoke. He'd hear her tiny voice whispering through the dark, "Mama." He never knew what became of her. Maybe her people found her. Maybe they didn't. But in the quiet years that followed, he prayed, awkwardly, honestly, that she had lived. The years rolled on, one much like the next. He grew older, slower, quieter. The cattle aged and died, the fences leaned, and the prairie wind wore everything down to dust. Then, one spring evening, as he was mending a fence line, he heard hoofbeats. At first, he thought it was just a rider passing through, maybe a drifter or a trader taking the wrong trail. But the sound grew closer, steady, measured. Not the reckless gallop of a stranger, but the purposeful rhythm of someone coming for a reason. He turned slowly, one hand brushing the revolver on his hip. Out of the fading gold of the sunset came a woman. She rode straight-backed, her long dark hair braided with red cloth, her buckskin dress marked with the intricate beadwork of the Apache. She sat her horse like she was born to it, proud and unshaken. She stopped a few paces away, swung down from the saddle without a word, and stood before him, tall, calm, eyes dark as the storm clouds over the mesa. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind moved between them, carrying the scent of rain and sage. Then she said, steady as stone, "Cowboy, I came to marry you." The hammer of his heart stuttered. He blinked once, twice, thinking he'd misheard. "What?" His voice cracked, rough from disuse. She met his stare unflinching. "I am the girl you saved 20 years ago. They called me lost, but I was found because of you. You carried me from fire when no one else would. You gave me life." Her gaze softened, and for an instant, he saw her, not as the proud woman before him, but as the trembling child beneath that wagon. "And now," she said quietly, the sunset painting her face in gold, "I return to give you mine." He stood there, frozen by the fence line, his hand gripping the barbed wire so tight it bit into his skin. The breath caught in his chest. The years between them seemed to vanish like smoke in the wind. The cowboy's mind reeled. 20 years of silence had just been broken with a single sentence, and he wasn't ready for the weight of it. "You don't mean that," he muttered, almost pleading. I was just a man doing what needed doing. You don't owe me your life, girl. But she only shook her head, her braids brushing against her shoulders. You don't understand, she said softly. In my people's stories, when someone carries you through fire, they become tied to you. Their breath, their courage, their shadow, all bound to yours. When I was small, I promised I would find the cowboy who saved me. All my years I carried that promise. Now I am here, he swallowed hard. Her eyes burned with conviction, bright, unyielding, terrifying. He'd faced men with guns and lived to tell of it, but this woman's gaze frightened him more than any outlaw ever had. He looked away toward the sinking sun. You've got family, he said gruffly. A tribe. They won't take kindly to this. They know, she said simply. Some tried to stop me. Others said I was foolish, but I walk my own path now. I rode through desert and canyon, across dry riverbeds and broken stone. My horse nearly died. My feet bled. Still I came. Do you think I would cross all that distance just to be turned away? The words hit him like hammer blows. He saw it then, the dust of her journey clinging to her dress, the weariness around her eyes, the calluses on her hands. She had not come lightly. She had come with the weight of years pressing behind her. He turned the barbed wire loose and stepped closer. Folks in town will talk, he murmured. They always talk. A white rancher and an Apache bride. It won't sit easy. Men might spit. Some might worse. Let them, she said, her chin lifting defiantly. They do not know what binds us. They do not know what fire made this promise. If they spit, I will stand taller. If they hate, I will not bend. My heart is not theirs to command. Her words struck deep. He felt a strange ache rise in his chest, something between pride and fear. She was not here to ask. She was here to claim what she believed was already hers. He stared into her eyes and saw not the frightened girl of memory, but a woman forged by hardship and destiny. A woman who had crossed a lifetime to stand before him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the grass. Somewhere far off, a hawk cried. He drew a slow breath. You don't know what you're asking, girl, he said softly. Ain't much left of me but bones and regrets. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint scar along her jaw, the mark of her past. Then let me share what's left, she whispered. You gave me life. Let me give it back. The cowboy felt something break loose inside him. The silence he'd carried for 2 decades cracked open like dry earth after rain. He reached up, hesitantly, his rough hand brushing against her cheek. The touch was clumsy, uncertain, but she didn't pull away. Her dark eyes met his, steady, unafraid. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't about owing or gratitude. It was about 2 souls bound by the same fire, each scarred, each searching for something neither could name. The sun dropped behind the hills, painting the sky blood red. The cowboy's voice came low, rough as gravel. Then stay, he said. Stay if you're sure. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both sorrow and peace. I have been sure for 20 years. As night fell across the prairie, the old rancher and the woman who had walked through fire stood together beneath the endless western sky. 2 lives, once torn apart by war and distance, now woven together by fate's quiet hand. And for the first time in 20 years, the cowboy spoke a prayer, not for the dead, but for the living.